Hello and welcome back to Bluebaggers Edge. It is always a pleasure to have your company, and we are back, of course, fresh off the announcement of the 2025 fixture. So we're here to unpack it all. And at first glance, I must say it looks an absolute doozy. Before we kick things off though, as always, if you enjoy our content, let us know by hitting the subscribe button. The goal is 1K subs by the time the 2025 season does come around. And we're well on our way now at the moment to 500. So if you can help us get there, that would be absolutely fantastic. So thank you in advance for all your support of a fellow bagger. So let's jump into things. And firstly, it looks as though the club is officially back in the good books with the AFL, having been gifted primetime slots of Thursday or Friday night games in the first 4 games to open our season. And of course, kudos goes to all of us supporters, as it's no doubt largely come off the back of our attendances at home games in 2024, where we were actually rated the second best attending side behind Collingwood in 2024 at an average attendance of 54,816. So we can really give ourselves a pat on the back there. So well done, baggers. Most importantly though, from the top, the question remains, and no doubt we're all asking this question from the get-go, did we get an extra game at the MCG, which we have been hoping for? Praying to the footy gods, to the AFL, please show us mercy. Yes. Thankfully, we can rejoice, especially if you're like me and despise playing at Marvel. It isn't the best place to play, and I don't think we actually play the best at Marvel either, but we play there 6 times at the MCG this season coming, and 5 at Marvel, where actually that was flipped in 2024, dating back to God knows when. Even better though is the fact that we will only play at Marvel 6 times in total, including away games. So the one away game is against North Melbourne as well, which is a little bit of a cherry on top, whereas 2024 saw us play there at Marvel a total of 8 games. So that's a big win there. Total of 17 games in Melbourne, of course, but most pleasing takeaway of this is we're in Melbourne to kick off the first month of the season, which is great. And then we also get the dream run at the back end with home games to round out the season, with 7 of our last 8 rounds being in Melbourne. So they are really great bookends for the 2025 season at the start and end. So it's looking really good so far. So let's continue. What else is there? So let's look at the teams that we played twice. These graphics have been supplied by blues.afl on Instagram. Make sure to give them a follow. Up there in terms of one of the best designers that we'll see that wear the navy blues. So thank you in advance. So as you can see here, we play Collingwood, Essendon, tick there. Of course, big supporter bases. It means that, we kind of have been alternating in the past of those seasons where we've only played them once in terms of who gets the home game. So it's good to see that both teams will get a share of revenue with a bit of a, bite of the cherry each. Then we play Hawthorn, North Melbourne, Port Adelaide, and West Coast twice as well. So that sort of counts out in terms of 2 top 6 teams, those being Hawthorn and Port Adelaide, 2 of the sort of middle run teams in terms of Collingwood and Essendon, and then 2 bottom 6 teams in West Coast and North Melbourne. So looking at it from that respect, it does, I guess, even things out. But to be given 2 games against the 2nd and 3rd last place teams of 2024 is an absolute gift, no doubt about it. Now, from an AFL revenue side of things, it does make sense for us to play, 2 of our biggest rivals in Pies and Essendon twice, as I said, but, it's the first time since 2016, believe it or not, this has actually happened. And then we face the dangerous young Hawks at the G twice over, which should be a packed house again. And then Port ticks off playing in Adelaide, which is a bit of a nice segue here to the fact that we, believe it or not, play in Adelaide 3 times in 2025. Now, the first game is a bit of a non-factor, given one of those is for gather round against the Eagles, but we will then also play both Port and Adelaide on their home decks, which is the first time this has happened in the one season. And I had to go through Blueseum, back through the archives, through the fixtures to try and find out when the last time this actually happened. And it hasn't happened since 2010. So I was scrolling through, and I'm like, was there an actual season where we'd played them, played in Adelaide twice over? So this is a really, really big shift as well. Now, looking at other interstate games, this is the breakdown. So unfortunately for those supporters that are based in Queensland, I have some bad news. We're actually not playing in Queensland, which is the first, again, changing things up the AFL. It's the first time this has happened since 2005. Again, I was scrolling, clicking links. en masse in Blueseum. It is really an interesting move, I think, but perhaps it's because we did obviously play at the Gabba in opening round in 2024, so it maybe evens out across both years with regards to now being fixtured to play the Lions at Marvel in 2025. But even so, I think we probably would have played Gold Coast at the home base, given we only played them at Marvel in 2024. Which is, again, where we're fixed to play them in 2025. And it's no real secret here that we do have a large following of baggers in Queensland. So I do, again, feel for the supporters there not having a chance to watch us live, unless, of course, you are willing to travel. So, as I said, for those people that are supporters of the baggers in Queensland, it is a bit of a pity in this case here. And we also play twice in WA as per usual, which also makes it, how many seasons on end now that we've been playing Freo, especially on their home deck. But I guess the ability here to draw a bit of a sizable crowd being the big appeal here, which fills the coffers for Freo for their home game, and likewise the Eagles as well. But with our recent history of close finishes against the Dockers in recent times, it's almost a bit of a mini rivalry here, I think. So it makes sense as to why the AFL would continue fixturing this, so I understand that. Now, we also play one game in New South Wales as well, which is against the Swans at the dreaded SCG. So that's probably the only real downside here. And I guess when we sort of counter that with a bit of an upside, we only play the Giants at Marvel. So no games at Giants Stadium, or NG Stadium is what they call it now. So that's a bit of a positive there. Now let's have a look at things in terms of breaks between games, which is of course a big one. Now, as I recall, in 2024, there were numerous times where we had a 5-day turnaround of a Saturday game into a Thursday game, or a Sunday into a Friday game, with an interstate travel mixed in as well, which I think just takes the piss. Because it disadvantages teams, and it happened to us, it's happened to other teams as well. But in terms of the fixturing side of things, it's just really, I think, unfair, because there are instances there where, especially happens all the time, where one team has a 5-day turnaround, the other team has like a 6 or 7-day turnaround. It would make more sense if both teams had the same advantage or disadvantage in this case, or even keel. So yeah, that's one thing I was looking for in terms of the 2025 fixture. So this time around, again, following on with the trend of, I guess, positive takeaways this time around, we've actually been repaid with 2 9-day breaks, which is very handy. And even better is we have no 5-day turnarounds in the first half of our season. But having said that, that makes me awfully worried that the AFL might slug us in the back part of the fixture once they release the dates and times for rounds 17 to 24. Now, we just, I guess, need the lads to have a cracking year and give the AFL more reason to keep putting us prime time in, rounds 17 to 24. And, of course, rely on us supporters to keep our end of the deal attending in droves, as we always do. So force the AFL's hand, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that continues. And coming off the back of a season where we had a fair few injuries, especially key injuries across the board, but especially in the back part of the year, where we had those 5-day turnarounds, and it just really wasn't conducive to chemistry, but also, having the best available team on the park. So, that is a big, big positive there. Now let's round things out in terms of the quirks of the fixture. So one big thing here is, of course, every single year when the fixture is released, there's death, taxes, and playing St Kilda at Marvel. If we play St Kilda twice, chances are we play both of those games at Marvel, one of those being a home game, one of those being away. Now, which I think is just quite hilarious, because the Saints are probably one of the more, natural tenants of Marvel Stadium, and they see it as their true home game, and they probably get the best advantage out of that. So playing them 2 games at Marvel is always fraught with danger for me. It's a bit of a piss take again, because it just advantages the Saints. So this time around, believe it or not, we play the Saints at the MCG. Yes, the MCG. So this time around, given the fact that we have been gifted that extra game at the MCG compared to Marvel, it looks as though this is the game that's been shifted across from Marvel to the MCG, which I'm not complaining about. But when we think about it in terms of attendances, I would have thought from the AFL's perspective that it would be a better packed out stadium at Marvel. That's probably part of the reason why they've done it in the past. But, when we're talking about it in terms of having a true home ground advantage, thankfully, for the first time in, I can't even remember or can't even recall as to when this has last happened when we've played the Saints at the MCG, we're finally getting a home ground advantage. So really, really stoked with that. Now, there are a couple of interesting starting times, and the first of which is round 11 against the Giants at 12:35 p.m., which is one of the earliest start times I can recall in recent memory. Looking at that, I was like, I have no idea as to why the AFL have done that. But looking at the breakdown for round 11, there's obviously a Thursday night game, there's a Friday night game, then the Saturday games, which is when this is happening. We play first off at 12:35 p.m. The next game is Hawthorn and the Lions at 4:15 p.m. Then it's North Melbourne and Collingwood at 7:35, and then Freo and Port Adelaide at 8:10 p.m. So they're all staggered games, which is really an interesting thing. And I'll have to go through when I find a little bit more time to compare that, because there was so many crossover games in 2024 and 2023 as well, I think from memory, where games are starting at the same time, or there was, multiple crossover games, and then there was one standalone game, like, an hour or two after the last game was played, and it made no sense. So hopefully the AFL are coming to their senses and trying to space out games just to allow, maximising the amount of viewership they're going to get on broadcast. And I know if I was a broadcaster, I'd be like, I want free air of games so I can maximise the amount of eyeballs that I have on any given game if I have the broadcast right. So maybe this is the thinking behind it. I'll have to go through, as I said, and really compare to see if they've done this over multiple rounds. If not, let us know. If there's another reason as to why the AFL have done this that I'm not across, let us know in the comments section below. I'd love to know. The other interesting start time is in round 15 against North Melbourne at 1:20 p.m. And just having a look at that fixture, we play the first game on the Saturday there at 1:20 p.m. Then it's Port and Sydney at 4:15 p.m. and then Collingwood and St Kilda at 7:35 p.m. So maybe, off the back of what I've just said, maybe the AFL are starting to smarten up and they're like, well, let's just try and spread out the game. So if that's the case, I'm all for it, because once this game is done, I'll always like to consume as much footy as I can. So I'm a general, footy nuffy as much as I am a Carlton nuffy. So, to be able to watch games is also a bonus as well. Now, the other quirk that I've noticed, and it is probably a quirk and a gripe of mine, is that we are again playing a late Sunday game against Essendon, this time in round 13, that starts at 7:15 p.m., which I think is a bit of a shit, especially for those families that would otherwise attend, especially for those with young kids, and especially for those people who live a fair distance away from inner Melbourne, who have to travel from, say, country Victoria, because by the time the game finishes, it's around about, 10:30 odd, and then travelling home, if it's an hour and a half drive home, you don't get home until midnight. And then, of course, having to work the next day on Monday is a bit of an ask. So I do think in terms of this, it does have a bit of a drawback, given that it is our home game. I know the AFL, and I have no doubt they've done this because, they've kind of done it out of convenience more than anything, because they even know that even if there is going to be a drop-off in percentage of supporters that aren't going to make the game, chances are the crowd size will still be reasonable enough given the large supporter bases. But the main gripe here, outside of the fact that it does disadvantage, a cross section of the supporter base, is the fact that it does put a cap on what the usual attendance would be if it were fixtured at a reasonable time, which leads into, the point being that it does put a dent in our finances in terms of gate revenue. So, whilst the AFL might be like, yes, rubbing their hands together, and they'll know that, a shit ton of people are going to tune into this game, and the broadcast is going to be rubbing their hands together as well. But outside of that, it does neglect, the fans in person going to the game. So I think they really need to strike a balance here. And I've always gone back to the train of thought that the simple fix here is that if they want to fixture late games in Victoria on a Sunday, do it for away games against, say, a WA side. So whilst it may be late in Victoria in terms of Australian Eastern Standard Time, it's early enough to cater for the home WA side and for those home fans attending the game in person. So in that sense, you cater for both markets, or stakeholders in this case being the broadcast viewers of obviously the Victorian side, and then, in terms of the attending fans of the home WA side. So a simple fix. I don't know why the AFL don't do it more often. I think the AFL at times, they overcomplicate things that should otherwise be simple. And when they're trying to cater for both stakeholders, being the fans and the broadcasters that have the broadcast rights, do that, because it ticks both boxes there, and you're not pissing off fans and you're not pissing off the broadcasters, given they've paid millions upon millions of dollars for the broadcast rights. Now let's round things out with my final thoughts. So I am absolutely wrapped. This is, I think, legit a red carpet or a golden ticket to making finals at minimum, and in our case, should be top 4, as we know. So there is legit no excuses. The AFL have really paved the way for us here to have a really good season. Double games against the Eagles and North, like I said, is a gift. And the Eagles 2 games as well, forgot to mention. They tick off 2 of our 6 interstate games, which is even better. And that leaves us with only 4 interstate games across the entirety of the year, being against Adelaide, Port, Freo, and Sydney. So really, really big pluses there for us in our favour. And the major takeaway in terms of negatives, as I said, is the fact that we don't have a game in Queensland. So it does suck for our Queensland supporters, as it means they have to travel to watch the lads play live. But all in all, I am super, super happy with the fixture. Fox Footy had a look at their article. They rate it as an A+. And I tend to agree. But how do you rate it? What do you love the most? What do you dislike the most? Let us know in the comment section down below. And don't forget, of course, to like and subscribe. And we'll catch you in the next one. Go Baggers.